Üdvözlök mindenkit! Elek Zoli mutatom be, hogyha be kell mutatni. Elnézést, ilyen személyes dolgokkal kell kezdem. Évfolyamtársak voltunk, én volt az első évfolyamtárs, akivel úgy szóba legyettem, úgy látszott, hogy hasonlóan öltözködik, ilyen underground, póló, vagy pulóver, meg ilyesmi. Aztán este összefutottunk ugyanabban a kocsmában, meg kiderült, hogy hasonló zenéket szeret, meg ő is ilyen bogaras ember, én hangyás. Aztán kiderült, hogy basszusgitározik később. Aztán tök véletlenül egyszerre voltunk, olyan is volt, hogy egyszerre voltunk ösztöndíjat Koppenhágában. Úgyhogy elég sok ilyen közös szál van. És még egy, amire most Márti emlékeztetett, hogy Zoli még nálam is rondában írt az évfolyamon, tehát így, de hogyha nem mondta, hogy ezt mondom, úgyhogy miénk volt a legolvaslatatlanabb jegyzet, de többet jegyzetelt nálam. Úgyhogy...
Galíciába jegyzetelt.
Én Galíciába jegyzetelt.
Egész évfolyamon.
Igen, úgyhogy ezek a személyes történetek. Zoli ugye futóbogarazik, és innen az állatorvosira került, aztán megjárta fél Európát, meg mondtad Kínát, meg Afrikát.
De az csak tanítás volt.
Igen. És volt többek között, hogy a Koppenhágában is, aztán most megint az állatorvosin van, és most kíváncsian várjuk az előadását.
És akkor angolul mondja is?
Igen, mondhatod angolul.
Jó, okay, so welcome everyone. So it's good to be returned here after 25 years exactly. So I think I was one of the most controversial students of this university in biology class. So it's good to be here. So I feel like that the murder returns to the crime scene. So okay. So as András mentioned, I used to, or I still do some science with some carabid beetles, ground beetles. But now this is just a secondary interest because now I'm a lecturer at the university. So the education and the lecturing is the first primary skill. And during my career, I didn't, how to say, experience as the classic Hungarian way of career building, that having a PhD, then having some grants, and then building a research topic. So I always have to say, had to find sideways, flip sides to make science. So that's why I'm a little bit, how to say, different from the classic way of, how to say, pure, clear scientific program. Today, what I would like to talking about for you, this is, I think it's 2 years ago I made the first version of this talk. When Peter Odor asked me to give a plenary talk on the SUSI, which is the Hungarian Sun Biological Symposium, was held in Tihany. I think the weather was the same, just was in March, not in May. And the idea came from that when I, looking for the references and looking for literatures and discussing with colleagues, usually next to beer, about science, I met a lot of different opinions about climate change and how they're thinking about climate change. And I see a lot of, how to say, stereotype way of thinking that people think about climate change. And I wanted to make just a talk where I, how to say, rather biased, I would say. So it's, I try to ignore all the proper scientific standardization. So I'm personal, biased, I just have to say focusing the things I'm interested. So if you expect a systematic review of climate change and forest beetles, this won't be the talk. So this is just my opinion, that how I think about it and what I think that it should be important to visit. So very first thing about, just to return to the alma mater, just making a small joke here. When I started the university, we start the ecology education learning, or actually reading Juhász Nagypál writings, articles and books. And he got this central hypothesis that every organism occurred anywhere and any time. So that was his central hypothesis. And the central fact was that that is not true. And this is what the, how to say, the ecology measured between the hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. And if I turn into the climate change, I just made a little bit homage of this hypothesis, because I think the biggest shame what the mankind made, that we believe that we are living in a safe and steady, stable environment around us. And the urbanization and the urban way of life, this is the best proxy of this, how to say, misconcept, I would say. And if I fit this concept into the Juhász-Nagy hypothesis, then the null hypothesis that the urbanization can be achieved anywhere on the planet Earth, and the central fact as being opponent with Juhász-Nagy, that this is actually true. So I traveled a lot, luckily, because I have some colleagues who support to inviting me all over the globe, mostly on the Palearctic region, but I luckily visit the Nearctic region, Asia as well. And I see the same congruences in urbanization and especially the way of thinking on the people about this situation. And this is just an example about the Chinese paper that they measured the degree of urbanization with the albedo prediction and how to say, looking for the trend. And if you look at the map, but I think it's unfortunately not so much visible. If you please follow the blue colors on the map. So this is the new potential areas where there will be between 2100 and 2050, so the albedo will increase, so some urbanization may occur. So you see that Asia, it's quite evident because of the Chinese rapid urbanization, and Africa, especially how to say, the western coast, Africa is highly developing, so it's really, how to say, increasing. What I want to talk about, and this is the classic thing about the climate change, so this melting globe and the parasites and their vectors, so this is what I want to, how to say, tendenciously avoid, because there are more prominent scientists in the country who work on this topic. I would like to just talk about that how the forest and that this climate change thinking can be studied, or what how we have been studying this topic all over the years, because entomologists usually rather stubborn people, so they are really like how to say, the conservative party in the UK, so they are really difficultly accept the new things. And when they adopt it, they are just using for decades without changing anything. So a little bit, how to say, using the techniques of Jared Diamond from the gum germs and techniques, I just divided my talk 3 topics. First, I want to talk about the major trends, what we know and what is the most common approaches for studying the climate change of forest insects and forest beetles, especially. The second, I would like to show 2 papers. One is my own research, which is just published a week ago, about how the taxon and trait-based approaches can help to identify some potentially climate change effect in a classic community-based approach. Another example is the first published long-term study on ground beetles from German scientists, where they have truly identified the drought stress on carabids. And the third part, I would like to bring some examples. One is an Italian friend who made a really, really ordinary study over 20 years. And at the very end, I would like to give you a short overview about how to see the perspectives, what I would expect as an entomologist for the climate change research. Okay, so let's talk about the trends and what we know about this situation. So there is a review written in the Ecological Monographs 2022. It's a really nice overview how the climate change and insects in global have been studied. And this Harvey and his team found big 3, big parts. The most of the publication was born. The first is usually they made 2 major parts of this things. The change part, so what they studied as the response, and the impact. So what is the so they have a response and an explanatory variable like in the simple GLM model, I would say. So they have when we are talking about climate change, usually people, scientists thinking about the gradual changes, long-term changes, extreme events. This is very common, especially in the continental Europe, mostly for the Mediterranean countries, Spanish, Italian papers, Slovenian forest ecologists now, because of a lot of forest fires, spontaneous forest fire, and intervention. Because of the citizen science, because of the ecosystem services, we are more sensitive to the public participation, public intervention, and also the management. So how we can make more effective the management point of view of the human, use, mostly for the food production or any kind of, natural capital use. Okay, so I don't want to talk about this too much. I would like to just highlight some major things from the three parts. From the long-term things, I really miss, and I think it's slightly understudied, is mostly the phenology and the seasonality of the insects. I will bring some examples that I really miss, that we knew from decades that insects are ectotherms, so we knew that they are dependent on the outdoor temperatures. But the phenology studies and the seasonality studies still so rare and not so common, because they are rather labor intensive and it's difficult to analyze statistically. So I would say it's because it's mostly a time series, so you have to decompose the time series and then find the global trends. So, and few people learn it. It's mostly the time series analysis still belongs to the pharmaceutical business or economy business, so the global trend analysis is more prominent there. Extreme events, this is very common, especially if you read Italian and Spanish entomologist papers, so the Burascano laboratory from the Sapienza University in Rome, they are studying the forest fire effects mostly in the European scale. If I would turn it to the Hungary, so we are struggling with the drought stress in the forests. I just talked with Peter Odor a few weeks ago. We were in a field visit with some French botanists, and the foresters mentioned that, for example, the beech, the Fagus sylvatica, is extremely produce the seeds. So the seed production is like 3-fold or 5 times more than usual. And I was surprised, because we knew that this species rather prefer the humidity. But they say that because of the drought stress, the trees try to compensate, so they have started to produce the seeds and the nuts actually, because they are providing nuts, just to provide enough sampling for the survival. So this is just the first sign in the forestry, and especially in the Hungarian mid-range forests are really, really dry. So even the weather like this, I was just a field work on last week, and the forest floor is still dry after 2 months of rain. Usually the people, if we are talking about extreme events, most of the paper has a high interest is about mostly the pathogen and the food resources. So we are always afraid that our food production, either meat or any kind of crop production, can be threatened by the climate change. And the intervention parts, I really almost see a few papers about this, how we can reduce this stress events, so how we can compensate the effect of climate change. Mostly we are just worried about the ecosystem services, and most of the paper, especially in entomology, so pollinators, natural enemies, and there is no, any kind of real management suggestion for how to change the situation. So the picture is quite complex. It's difficult to judge or just make it really shortly and really briefly how to study a good way the climate change. So that's why I made this more arbitrary and more biased. This is a very old paper. This is a Rodolfo paper from 2014. So you can blame me that this is more than an 11-year-old paper, but the trend is still the same. So they are just, that there is a NGO organization, the International Union of Conservation of the Nature, the IUCN, and they were the very first organization, I think in the late 90s, I think 1993 when they officially launched. They started to monitor the European flora and fauna and how the conservation flagship species can survive. And they are identified that which are the most threatened insect taxa all over the continental Europe. And if you look at this graph, so the red parts showing that how the proportion of the decrease. And you see the beetle on the prominent place. Grasshoppers and locusts and crickets, we are not, I haven't seen too much paper about somebody worrying about the crickets or grasshoppers, just because of the reduction of the semi-natural grasslands in Europe, especially in Germany and northern Italy. They are really started to shrinking in terms of the population. I think Hymenopteras, because of the ecosystem service, pollination, and all of this kind of thing, that they are one of the most, focused taxa in terms of the entomology. And another taxa, I think, where the situation is more serious, but people, there is only just few scientists who work with dragonflies and damselflies. They are not really, they are, I think, slightly understudied, but they are very good indicators of wetlands and the proportion of wetland habitats all over the country. And especially Hungary, they would be more studied, because we might see how the Hungarian plain is getting, dry up. So I worry about these taxa and the beetles as well. Okay, so I think it's almost everyone in this room read some paper about how the insect apocalypse upon us because of the decreasing trends in the global species richness and mostly the abundance of the entomologists, the insects and the beetles. But usually we are just, we are very opportunistic when we are, criticize, or we are just about the biodiversity loss, because we are have a, the stomach-based approach, because we are varying because of the pests. So this beetle baby boom phenomenon, so when the forest pests or barking beetles are, they have more graduation on the European scale. So we are just, varying about the log production, timber production, or olive oil production mostly. And we are protecting the beneficial taxa. So Hymenopteras, pollinators, natural enemies. Mostly the pollinators are the number ones. Natural enemies is just in the second. But there is a new trend. I think it just appeared roughly 10 years ago. It started by the Wageningen University. They started to use the mealworms. So this is the family Tenebroideae. So for protein production. So if you are, going to the gym and you want to do some bodybuilding, and when you are buying these protein products, and if you check the labels, you will see that there is a lot of insect protein already there. I don't want to name the companies because of the copyright issues, but it's now we are, as Jared Diamond says in the Gum, Germs and Techniques, that first we ate the megafauna on the planet Earth, and now we are started to eat the rather minor creatures like insects. So this is the pure sign that we are eating up the globe in a long run. So as much as we can. Okay, so first, one of my first ideas was that I would show you some kind of Google Scholar or Scopus target list or hit list of the publication on insects or beetles and climate change. But finally I decided, instead of the dry, list view, just showing two examples of the scale, what most of the publication targets. If you look at both, paper comes from the Nature or Nature Communications. Science, both. If you look at on the right, so this is the climate change sends beetles into overdrive. So this is the first publication about this beetle baby boom. So how the pest can, can conquer the German forestry industry and the French one as well. And this is purely about the managers, screaming that there is some kind of changes, and because of the dry period and the rather mild winters, bark beetles larvae didn't decayed during the winter, so they are more and more abundant in the spruce forest and pine forests in Germany. And the other end of the scale is the conservation approach. This is a citrus species, one of my favorite, genus among the genus Carabus. And this is from the US. So they are studied how to say, the species in the Appalachian Mountains for over 20 years, and they are showing that the papers that how the population of this species, it's an Arctic species, is shrinking because of the climate change, because already there are some changes also the population. So we have usually these two major, how to say, mainstream science in climate change and entomology is the conservationist approach, and the other is the management approach that we are, it can be agroecology, it can be forest ecology, or any kind of how to say, production-based approach. But this is the two extreme thing we can, how to say, find in the literature. So now I would like to talk about just two small case studies as an example that how we can study the climate change and how an idea can come after, how to say, a long time of field work. So the first is promoting some own publication which was just published a week ago in the Insect Conservation and Diversity, after a year struggling with the reviewers and the referees because of the different opinion on using of GMs and generality models. But finally we find how to say the both way that everyone is happy, either the authors or the reviewers. The idea came from that I started to work with Peter Odor, I already mentioned his name, I think more than 10 years ago. So we start our first common project in 2014 in the Pilish, how to say, just monitoring the major forest management regimes which are available in Hungary now, or the foresters do. And over the years, so we did actually, with Jana Ruzičková, who is my postdoc, or former postdoc now, because now she's an independent scientist. And we just realized that we are seeing that as compared to 2014, there is a decreasing trend of the insects in the, not just in the Pilish, but when we are, how to say, walking around the country and collecting the carabids, we are just seeing that somehow less and less individuals we can find. And we just sit down and when we have no any kind of primary interest to, or we don't have any must-have published task, we started to form this paper, and we just simply made a really simple analysis. We just calculated the average difference between 2014 and the latest year, which was 2022, maybe, no, 2018. So we didn't include the last 2 years because it wasn't ready that time. So we have just, how to say, the 5 years old, I would say, midterm data. And what we found, it's just, this is just the two examples. So this is the gap when the foresters made a small gap in the forest. And between over the 5 years, the gray shows that we have no effect on so no any decreasing trend in the, so no effect actually, because the confidence intervals includes the 0. So no any effect on the abundance trends of that species. The red shows the decreasing trend when it's truly effect because of not including the confidence interval. The green shows that there is a positive trend. So somehow the species increased. So we have just only one example. This is the Pterocerus melanarius, is a common generalist species. But if you look at these two species, so this is the Aptinus bombarda, this is the bombardier beetle, which is a truly mesophil forest specialist species, and another which is rather decreased in terms of abundance over the 5 years. This is the Carabus hortensis, and in both habitats. So either the control habitat, which is untouched over now 110 years, and this is just for the gap which was made in roughly 10 years ago. So this is the ordinations. They are just showing the yearly variation between within the same treatment. So this is all of the polygons corresponds to the gap. You see that 2014 is 15 is making one cluster, but the rest of the years, so when, how to say, we are expecting that the community return to more or less, regenerating phase or rebuilding the assembly structure. So they are still different from the original state, which is 2014. And if you look at the control, so we are purely, see not real big trends of the data. 2016 and 2018 is slightly, different from the other years, but these 2 years was one of the first summers when we have this really, really dry summer period. So this is just the difference between the abundances. Okay, so it's another example which is more, standardized and more very well built. This is a Fabio Weiss paper, who is a really gifted German carabidologist, and he just got his PhD in 2023, so just a year ago. And he is working now in New Zealand, next to Robert Evers and Raphael Didam, who are very good and highly prominent scientists in entomology and habitat fragmentation studies. So, and Raphael Didam is actually the editor-in-chief for the Insect Conservation Diversity. And it was really good to exchange some email with him as when we are, working on our papers. So what they did, so this is Linda and his research group is mostly, they are settled in Berlin. And there is a forest reserve called Elek, which is the northeastern part of the Berlin region. And they are, this is, I don't know how about your, what you know about Germany. The Berlin area is mostly this sandy soil, and including some, classic taiga forest. So they are spruce and pine forest and mixed forest there. And they started the monitoring in 1999. So actually this is just before we graduated at the university. And they, the last study, they actually what they published in this paper we just published last year. So they finished in the 2022, or they just dealing with the data. So it's a rather long-term data, very well built things, and they calculated this standardized precipitation evaporation index. So there is an air package with the same name like here. So simply, if you look at this trend line, it's showing that the blue areas show the drought periods, and the red part of the curve showing that they have a positive balance in terms of the humidity in the forest, because this kind of, sandy soil forests are very sensitive for the lack of the precipitation. Because there is no capacity to holding the water in the first 50 centimeter of the forest floor, and because of the spruce species, usually they spreading their roots just the first 50 centimeter of the soil. They are very sensitive for these drought periods, and this is very well visible in the the forest flora and fauna as well, because they are getting impoverished. So they are studied three things. They have a really complex modeling. So they have the linear models, they have the non-linear models, and they have this standardized precipitation and evaporation index studied. And the only thing I would like to show here just that either the abundance or the biomass, so the amount of the species, individuals they collected, so actually the mass of the species, they are really decreasing. So it's all of the model, this is all trend lines, so all the three graphs just, the trend lines are overplotted here. So they are showing that there is a massive decreasing trend in the abundance and the biomass of the forest insects. So, and this is North Germany, which is rather humid because it's very close to the Balt, the Northern Sea. So they have a more Atlantic influence than we have in the continental Europe. And if, a German forest entomologist experience similar trend or same trends what we found, this is something really, important and really interesting to step further. Okay, so, and when I started to look after the references or looking for the literature, so what they have studied, I just found some one or two papers which actually started to form hypotheses from the point of view of the community, of how they react to the local community, insect community, to the climate change. And this is the Laurent Buckley paper, which was published in the Current Opinion of Insect Science, which is a really nice journal because you have to apply with your abstract and your title if you want to publish something then, and if they approve that you can publish this paper. And this is among the highest cited papers. And they are just, how to say, started collecting the information from references and literatures, because they are, his team is they are truly, agricultural entomologists, or applied entomologists, not just conservationists as myself. And they are, forming the hypothesis that we knew that the insects are really, really plastic in terms of the activity. So when the cold weather like this, when we have like 8 or 10 Celsius in the morning, they are decreasing the activity. But if this stormy and cloudy weather turns into a sunny day, then they are active within a few minutes or just half an hour, 1 hour. So they would be ideal to adaptive to the climate change. So that was their primary idea, that they want to visit the topic. But they, based on the references they found, I don't want to give all the details how many genus and species they studied. They formed 2 really interesting hypotheses. The very first was that this called Rost generation hypothesis. If we are staying at the local community, we didn't focusing on the invaders and the immigrants. They are coming from outside. We are just looking for the internal things we have here. This is the first case when we are when a community can lose some value because of the climate change. Because if you are, I don't know how much you are going to the field or how you like to talk about the weather. One of my favorite topics with my colleagues in the morning, we just have a rough discussion about the weather. So in the last few years, if you experience Hungary, we are more Mediterranean in terms of the global climate or the seasonality, because we have a rather mild winter period. So actually, if you have a good quality soft shell jacket, you don't need the winter coat, because you can survive, because we have minuses for 2 weeks. This winter was really exceptional because we have the minus Celsius for almost a month. So I was really shocked that I felt cold, and I really love it actually. And but we have no really spring, because the spring 2 years ago takes 2 weeks, and the autumn is very short, usually less than a month. But if you recall your childhood memories, the spring and winter started in March and last until mid-May or end May, usually. But the autumn started in September, so this is the Indian summer, and lasts until mid of October. But now actually we have because now the May is very cold and mild and humid, so we have like March temperatures now. Many species of the insects are breeding in spring, and they cannot breeding yet because of the weather. So, and because of the lack of the breeding and the reproduction, some generation will lost. So there will be no next generation appears in the forests. And another thing is that the cold season sensitivity hypothesis. There is another strategy that there are some species which are breeding in the autumn, overwintering as larvae, and then the tenerals appears in the next season. And because of this, general shift in the temperature regimes, and the spring start later and the summer start slightly later, earlier, depending on the year. So it's really unpredictable. The spring active species usually more active in the autumn. This is what we experienced in the village. And we find the lack of the activity of the cold season, so the autumn active species. And because of this, internal conflict in the community. So the spring breeders are still active in September and in August. And there is no chance that for the autumn species can reproduce in a sufficient amount, and then they have, how to say, survive in the forest for the next generation. And something similar has been found by Ferenc Samu, who is one of the famous Hungarian spidermen, so spider ecologists or arachnologists to be precise. Because if you study the spider population, which is, how to say, you can find in the growing season, you haven't found so much trends, and they seems rather unaffected in terms of the climate change. But I don't know how much you know the spiders, but there is a specific part of the spider fauna which is active in winter, especially in the snowy winters. And with Robert Galli, they published just a paper, I think a year ago, where they studied this winter spider fauna, and they found that, how to say, at least 6 or 7 species disappeared in Hungary, which was here like 20 years ago, when Ferry was made this first study. So this cause sensitivity hypothesis is really, really, how to say, important, and from the point of view of the entomology is one of the most cardinal points where we should address some new studies. And the paper also, how to say, reviewed that which is the well-researched and not well-researched part of the entomology. And I already, how to say, mentioned these things, but they are, how to say that we should focus on more the late season active species, because they can be more sensitive to the climate change because of the internal conflicts in the forest community, and they can be this so-called early warning signalers, which is, or early warning organisms, and they can show the effect of the climate change. And based on this idea, which I found on the Buckley paper, we haven't just studied the species taxa as itself. We also, how to say, look at the major functional traits and functional, how to say, habitat affinity of the species, because the carabids are very well known in terms of their ecology. It's very well documented. So almost all Palearctic species, we knew the habitat affinity, how they overwinter, when they have the reproduction period, spring, autumn, or the whole season. And we just made the comparison, and here I included the whole forestry system we studied. And we just look at if you look at these forest plots, you will see that there is no green trends, or we will have neutral trends for generalist and open habitat species. So the opportunistic species, we are very positive because they are, how to say, really, really good dispersers because of the flight activity. But the most of the biggest changes, the biggest decrease is for the forest species, is consistently all of the forest treatment. So we have just two major parts. I forget to mention that this is a rotation forestry. This is a classic. I just cut some parts of the forest and take the log and the timber away. So this is the preparation cut when we are just, how to say, removing a certain amount of tree. This is just being Hungarish a little bit. This is called szálalás, and this is the clear cut. This is when we are just, how to say, removing the part of the forest and nothing left, just the bare ground. And the retention forest, when there is some tree remains in the middle of the clear cut area. So this is very common in the Nearctic region, when you have enough room for this, but in Hungary is not so common. And the close to nature forestry activities, this is the gap management, and you're making the small gaps because of the Standovár papers. If you know Tibor Standovár, who is the big oracle in the forest ecology in Hungary, Standis suggests, based on his, I think, 40 years in science, that the gap management is the more resembled to the natural disturbance regime of the forest. When there is a windfall, so the tree is actually fall, and then there is a gap in the forest, so this is very natural. Okay, so you see that if we are look at the traits, that the late activity of the species, which is with the highest variation, the autumn activity, also, how to say, negatively affected by this yearly trends between 2014 and 2018, and also the larvae, how to say, larvae and imago overwintering stage, which is because for the carabids, for the overwintering, they need a really, really strict temperature regime. So usually 2 or 3 Celsius deviation can allow. And this is, and also this, how to say, activity overlap between the the spring and the autumn activity of the species. So this is, I call it like an internal structural conflicts in the community, and that's why I have to say it's reduced the trait diversity in the community. These trends, and this is how to say reduce the stability of the insect community as well in the forest. And something similar what Fabio Weiss found. So they were more cautious about the statistics than I showed on the previous graph. Here, just if you look at this violin plot, if I remember well, it's called in R. So this is just, I would like to show you just the size and the wings, because these are the most crucial part of the insects, because they are very, they are very important if you want to estimate the dispersion potential of the species, because the larger of the body size, the least probability that the beetle can fly, because usually the large carabids not fly, so they are brachypteros, so they have no second wing, so they cannot fly. And if you look at the trends, so either the large size, so if you look at so this is like 20 millimeters, and so there is usually this is like the carabus size, I would say. This is where they have the highest loss of the species. For the biggest decrease, they have the short wings, so this is the non-flying carabids, and the dimorphic, because there are some kind of wing dimorphism on insects, especially carabids, so when the second wing can develop or not develop in certain amount of the population. So this is a very good proxy for meta-community theory to studying on carabids. It's especially on, if you know Berend Aukema, who was a Dutch carabidologist and a really good marathon runner. So he studied this wing dimorphism on the carabids on the late 90s. And they are also, I just put here the small fragment of the discussion, and they are saying that the old decline of the species, the carabids we are talking about, they were predators. And the reduced dispersability, so the large-bodied carabids and predatory behavior, which is the most prominent behavior, predators of, decline in the forest community, but it's in the other side. So this is just, they have really, really similar results to what we found on the Pilish. So I was really happy I just sent him an email to Fabio and shared the final version of the manuscript, and he was very happy to see that we have similar trends, and he has some idea how we should reanalyze our data in the future in a joint publication. And okay, finally, just because the time is short and I'm almost in the question answer section, I would like to just roughly mention a taxonomist who I heard first time about the climate change. This guy called Pietro Brandmeier, and he's a half Italian, half a Hungarian entomologist. He lives in Trieste. And Pietro married with a lady from Sicily, Tulia, and she was also a carabidologist, and they spent their lives to describe the high mountain area of alpine fauna of carabids in the southern Apennines and in the Sicily mountains. And Pietro really loves to visit caves and collecting carabids there. And he found that over the years, which is from, he collected historical references, and also based on his collection, he looked, as a taxonomist, he looked for the true cave-dwelling species. So this is the Dubialius genus, which is very common. This is the blind carabids. They are living there per se. But over the years, he found that there are some species which are secondary. During the summer, when there is a dry period in the Mediterranean, they are moving to this cave area, and they are, tendenciously return year by year. And this is just showing these two graphs that which genuses were most common as compared to, this is the Dubialius genus, which is the true cave dwellers, and this is just that, additive genuses of carabids. They can occur in the cave fauna as well. So, and it was very, interesting to see. And his paper is like 2013, so more than 10 years ago he published this paper in a small Italian journal. And now Pietro has at least 6 postdoc students who are studying and how to say, making more standardized, and they have a Horizon project on this cave and climate change monitoring. Okay, so before run away, I would like to mention some potential things where I see there is some missing information. And this is a review which is, you probably know some, because many of you are entomologists, this is the Montgomery review. This is the insect apocalypse is here or not. And he just roughly mentioned the things that we're still not monitoring well the insects. So we are just collecting the insects because we have no long term of data set. And if you, I don't know how much paper you review, but I think over the years I see more papers where we have no true taxonomic identification, or where the authors are using morphospecies approach, especially from South African papers, South American papers, Australian papers. So there is a taxonomic and taxonomist deficit all over the universe. And there is an open database which is really well managed, and I recommend to you to use. This is the Entogen, which is collecting the, especially designed for the climate change effect studying on entomological data. So, so you can feel free to join this project. Okay, so I don't want to provide any or generate any kind of take-home messages, because I think this is not a topic where we can say anything for true. I just want to, how to say, having 3 provocative questions, just for having some discussion, hopefully. And this is, everything is my own opinion, so please feel free to being opponent of this. I think the very first thing is we have to think about that, which is more threatening, that having invaders, having new species, invasive species, invasive insects, beetles in the country, or losing the, how to say, or having an internal conflicts in the communities we already have here for in the long run. So I think it's really important to go around this question. If you look at the publication, that we can easily answer the second question, because of the foundation-based science and publication-centered science, we are more interested to publishing short-term studies than long-term studies, because it's difficult to find funding for long-term studies. And the third thing is that I don't know how is your own field, but in entomology there is a, how to say, a trend of these global systematic reviews and meta-analytic or meta-analysis based reviews time, and we can read out many interesting trends of those papers, but those are truly will help us to find solutions for local problems. So sometimes I feel that it's really good to know the sophisticated global trends, but we don't know how you can adapt to the local situation. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope that it wasn't too eclectic, my talk, and I hope that you have some questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, do you have any question? Thanks a lot for this great presentation. So, question? Yes? Okay. So,
I'm just wondering if you have any opinion about why the flightless dimorphic beetles are more endangered because of climate change.
Because it's part of the population, the wingless population cannot fly away when there is how to say, any kind of habitat fragmentation. They just simply, how to say, that for the carabids, they have 2, how to say, means of dispersal. One is the walking, because they are, when you are wingless, you just walk on the ground. The second is the flying. And when you have no wings, it's more difficult to avoid the forest fires, because usually for example, the Mediterranean area, the forest fires really rapidly spread. So it's 0.5 meter per second, 10 centimeter per second, usually. So if you are walking, insect, it's difficult to avoid any kind of hazardous event. But if you are flying, you can fly away and find another patch where you can, how to say, survive, or you can persist. So that's why they are in a threat actually, because of the dispersion is, and how to say, having a meta community, so the population network in a landscape is difficult to achieve.
Yeah, but if you think about climate change, it's generally believed that this is a global phenomenon. So climate is changing not a short scale, which insect can go and fly. So even if you can fly, you fly and you find yourself in the same situation a couple of 100 meters away. So
Yeah, but
forest fire might be an exception, but the other case.
well, I don't know exactly. I just so it's. I think insects are not so sophisticated as birds and mammals, and they are, how to say, really cognitively looking for the key habitat where they are living. So they are. That's why they are spreading the propagulum. So they are gonna, how to say, reproduce, having a lot of eggs or producing next generation rapidly, and then they are believe that the high number provide the best. And find at least some part of the population find the ideal location for survive, and this is enough. So this is how this is a mass effect they try to achieve. That's why I brought the example of the Fagus sylvatica, because they have the same strategy. Just they are investing more to the nut production than just the the individual survival. So the growing rate is going down of the beech forest in all over the Europe, but the nut production is going up like crazy. So this is the same, that this is how they can compensate the situation. So, but yeah, it's the situation changes in globally all over the Europe. The one thing I would like to mention is, János Kis from the same university where I come from, and János and Adam Gor, who was János PhD student, he just defended his thesis. And they are studying the Parnassipsum venemosina in the Visegrad mountains. And this is the butterfly which lives in a small grassland patches. And there are many potential, the population is shrinking. This is the overall, message of the PhD thesis, and János also mentioning that it's difficult to find the species over and over the years. And this is not because that the grasslands are decreasing, but because of the management has changed. So there is no gaming pressure on the grasslands, and the Calamagrostis is growing very high, and the species, and the Corydali species, which is key for the species for reproduction, is disappearing from the edge habitat of the grassland. And even the national park comes 2 times a year to, moving along. It's not enough to, provide the same survival. So I think it's really difficult to answer for your question, but it's a multivariate thing, I would say. So we are not living as close to nature as like 100 years ago, and that's why we are losing the many biodiversity components.
Other questions? Okay, I would have one.
Oh,
okay.
That's it.
Maybe this is a bit unrelated, but I was wondering that often if you hear about climate change in forests, it is predicted that the forest composition will change.
Yeah.
And of course, the associated beetle fauna will change as well. Can you make predictions how this dynamics will unfold?
Yeah, it's really good. I just I don't know. Do you know György Csóka, who is one of the famous Hungarian forest entomologists? And Gyuri just defended his DSc thesis, I think a month ago actually, and he studied many forest insects, and that was one of the reviewer, who was Viktor Markó, who is also another famous entomologist, that the trees composition and the insect community composition can change, and it's very taxon specific, and it depends on the region, because in Hungary we have at least I would say 3 major climatic regimes for forest regeneration. So the forest regeneration is decreasing in the northern mid-range mountains, and in the Meček it's really, really low level. So if you cut the forest off, you cannot, how to say, there is no regeneration actually, because no enough rain for the saplings to grow enough. So you have some bushes like in the Mediterranean, but no any, how to say, growing. But the forest insects are there, even in this bushy region. So it's very difficult to tell that what will be the global trend. I think it's the major case that how the foresters changed the species composition and the first canopy of the forest. Because they are still thinking like as much as I talk about I just have a, how to say, impression of the village park at the ZRT we working with. I think because they are, the former director actually now the head of the Hungarian forestry division in the Ministry of Agriculture, and they are thinking about the forest like a cropland. So they are looking for the timber, and the only thing I see as a conservation management, that every hectare they have one habitat tree. Habitat tree means that there is at least a little hollow or some partly dead wood. So there is some kind of, how to say, not this purely timber product forest. And this is very, very, how to say, low level. And also in the Hungarian forest, the biggest problem is that there is no dead wood in the forest floor. It's less than 1% is the average in the country level. And in Europe, it's somewhere between 20% and 3 and 20% in the European scale. So we are very intensively use our forests. Actually, you can consider it as a, how to say, winter wheat field, just not in one season, in 3 months you are using, but you are using 80 years, because now this is the rotation period for the forest, so they cannot last for 100 years. So I think we are, how to say, running out of our supply in terms of the, how to say, wood production. This is what I worry about. And we don't know how the things will change, because I think the forest will disappear from a major part of the country, even in the mountain areas.
Okay, other question? So, I would have one. You mentioned that many species move from spring to autumn, the flying. In the case of ants, we found an opposite story. There are late autumn flying species which start egg laying in early spring, and many of these started to fly in early spring instead of late autumn.
It's in a semi-natural context or in an urban area?
It's a good question.
Because it's the urban area, we knew that the phenology is extending because of the heat island effect. But in a semi-natural area, well, I don't know. And the ants are colonizers, so they have a different, how to say, constraints for activity and reproduction.
Okay, thanks. Okay, other question? Okay, thanks a lot again.
Thank you. And